Yeah, there you see the current odds. Falcons minus 130, Bucks plus 325, Saints plus 350, Carolina Panthers. 11-1 there in the basement. 2024 NFL betting preview, breaking down our best bets for each division. You just saw the futures. Let us know your favorite pick for any and all NFC South teams in the comments. Guys, I'll kick things off here in the South. I've been tasked with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and honestly, just a weird team to get a bit of a read on for 2024. This was one of the luckiest football teams last season, and the Baker Mayfield rebirth narrative largely a mirage when you dig in to some of the numbers there. For example, and this is per the Bet the Board pod, they called out 24 turnover worthy throws, only 10 picked off, where a guy like Jalen Hurts threw 15 turnover worthy throws, all 15 turned out to be interceptions. The third down numbers specifically, which is really where Baker excelled last season, still a down you don't want to have to get to. Probably very much unsustainable year over year. They play in the worst division in football. They had the 9th easiest schedule last season, and they were lucky as hell to get into the playoffs after a 1-6 stretch at one point last season through 7 games and a 9-8 record. But even with all that, I'm still taking this team to finish number 2 in this terrible division at plus 185. The weapons are there for this team, specifically at wide receiver. New offensive coordinator in the mix here. Reports that Chris Godwin is going to play in the slot now. We all know what Mike Evans can and will do. And I love this team getting Jalen McMillan out of the Pac-12. Very good receiver out of Washington. One of the best left tackles in the game, of course, Tristan Wirfs, and a very solid play at right tackle from Gadecki. Interior of this offensive line does need work. It is not pretty. Per Sharp Football Analytics, the 11th easiest schedule this season. I think they do enough to finish second in this division. I don't think we see a trip to the playoffs again, though. So Tampa Bay, second place in the South, plus 185. I mean, another team that we can probably all agree is going to miss the playoffs is the Carolina Panthers. Tony, you are the lucky one. What?
No, just trust me. Just trust me, Tony. You're going front and center on this one, buddy. Here.
So people who are listening at home don't know that Steve knows what our picks are because he puts the graphics in. So Andrew isn't aware of what I'm about to say. So I'm sitting here under my breath laughing because I've got a very positive Carolina Panthers bet for you. Give me plus 1,100 to win the South on the Panthers. Now, I know I'm on the record as with some Panthers slander, specifically toward Bryce Young, talking about his size, talking about how silly he looks wearing a backpack. And gun to my head today, I don't think Bryce Young is going to have that turnaround season. But at 1,100 odds, 11-1 in a division that is wide open, I've got to take a little sprinkle on that there. You got Dave Canales. You talk about the season Baker Mayfield had last year. Leaves Tampa Bay, comes to Carolina, where he's turned around Geno Smith's career. He's turned around Baker Mayfield's career. This is the perfect guy to be at Bryce Young's ear. And again, I don't think the Panthers are going to have a turnaround season. But when I start to say, wait a second, why were they so bad last year? Look at what they were up against last year. They had a ton of injuries on defense. They had J.C. Horn only played in 6 games. Shaq Thompson only played in 2 games. C.J. Henderson played in 12 games. Jeremy Chin played in 12 games. So they were constantly banged up. And when those guys were on the field, oftentimes they weren't 100%. So they were dealing with a ton of injuries. Awful offensive line play last year. No offensive weapons. And the Panthers have addressed those things. They brought in 2 guards, including your boy Hunt from Miami. Steve spent $150 million on 2 guards, and Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt, and they've upgraded their wide receiver position too with Deontay Johnson. So now Adam Thielen is a bad number 1 receiver, but he's an okay number 3 or 4 receiver. And so the guys that they brought in, they've addressed their weaknesses. And again, don't label me the Panthers guy, right? It's Panthers the odds that's making it really sweet. And I got to just take a little bit of sprinkle in a division that's wide open.
All right, Steve. Steve, speaking of talking yourself into a bet, you've been tasked with the New Orleans Saints. What do you like with this team?
So it's funny with this one. This one kind of lines up. Like, oddly enough, this division, if we actually get it right, it's going to be hilarious because we potentially could. So hear me out. I like the Saints to finish third in the division. Derek Carr's golf game is improving, which is great. So here's the thing. I don't believe in Derek Carr. I don't believe in Dennis Allen, and their offensive line is ass. Those are three massive strikes for me. And if you don't have a quarterback, a coach, or an offensive line, man, you're in trouble. I kind of like their backfield a bit, but here's the thing. When you look at their offensive weapons, Chris Olave, stud. After him, name someone. Name someone that's good. Name someone that's above average.
Oh, my God. Late round fantasy steal, Steve. Come on, man.
I like him, but I mean, not consistently, right? I know they brought in Clint Kubiak for their OC, but I just don't believe. I cannot believe in Derek Carr. For my money, Derek Carr can do one thing really well in the NFL, and that is be mediocre. And the other thing he can do is get field goal kickers paid. So Saints to finish third at plus 160.
The Atlanta Falcons. What do you got here?
Yeah, probably too many headlines, guys. I mean, call me crazy, but I'm not jumping into the hype here. I'm on the Falcons to miss the playoffs at plus 152. Kirk Cousins is presumably an upgraded quarterback, but have you seen the rest of their roster? I mean, Cousins is 36 years old. He's coming off a right Achilles injury. So let me just kind of get into that a little bit. Aaron Rodgers hurt his left Achilles last year, but that's not the planting foot for a quarterback. So I've read a lot of doctors' reports, and presumably if you tear your right Achilles because it's the planting foot, you are going to lose some arm strength, at least to start the following season. Kirk Cousins already not a monster arm himself. And you just look at the Falcons' depth chart. Their offensive line played well last year. I know Bijan Robinson is going to be a star eventually. Are we going to believe in Kyle Pitts for a third or fourth straight year? But then you look at their front seven, and it may be the worst in football. I mean, there's a reason the Falcons brass took a look at what they had and traded for a third-round pick for Matt Judon. There's a reason they're signing a Justin Simmons in the last week of August to play safety, guys. They looked at what they had on defense, and they knew that this team is not very good. Judon's an injury risk himself. Grady Jarrett was banged up last year, had just 1.5 sacks. And then you look at like Lorenzo Carter as your next best edge rusher. So just not a lot of confidence in there, guys. I feel like their brass knows that they're not a good team. I feel like the hype has outweighed how good this team could actually be. And I just like the idea of fading a team that everybody else is going to jump on this year.